Anarchy is impossible. No matter how wonderful some people think anarchy would be, it cannot be achieved because of some very simple and otherwise obvious reasons. For example, you would have to be able to trust everyone in society to respect the rights of everyone else, without any authority to enforce such rights and protect weaker persons from stronger, deceitful, dishonest persons. And even if you could, like magic, suddenly have a society where everyone could be trusted to respect everyone else's rights, you would have to be able to protect your anarchy country or community from all those countries and communities that are not anarchies, who would manage to send infiltrators and saboteurs who would create violent, divisive incidents that would easily escalate into horrific levels of distrust and violence without any authority to prevent further danger to innocent people. In other words, there would be enemies of anarchy from within and from without who would have a very easy time causing trouble and benefiting from constant conflict. While relative democracy and weak semi-democracies, which unfortunately is what most so-called democracies today are failing to provide to full stability and freedom that true full democracy would and should provide, some democracy, with some form of democratically elected representative authority and leadership, does provide some degree of public security, social safety, and economic stability that any attempt at anarchy would not be able to provide. Anarchy can only work with relatively perfect people and a constitutional set of rules and laws that everyone would voluntarily agree to obey and live by. But to have such a near-perfect society of near-perfect people needs a process that takes a long time to achieve before you could even hope to have a somewhat viable, workable form of anarchy. And you would still have to get everyone else in the world to form social anarchy communities. And that is totally unrealistic and therefore impossible. So, anarchy cannot be achieved without some kind of long-term, globally voluntary effort that would obviously have to be agreed upon by a democratic vote of people everywhere. Decision of the majority of the people. And even if by some unreal magic you could have that decision made both internally and globally, and get everyone to agree in theory to live without law enforcement and without democratically elected representative leadership, you would overnight begin to have serious problems with disastrous and life-threatening consequences. Why? Simple. Because not enough people would want to work as trash collectors, trash recyclers. Not enough people would want to work as sewage and waste control management people. Not enough people, would do any of these things. So trash and human excrement waste would just simply pile up all over cities, towns, and villages, posing an absolute danger because eventually disease would just kill off millions and millions. Eventually everybody would be at risk. And then there would be the chaos in hospital emergency wards because people would stop feeling any need to accept the authority of anyone else, to make quick and relatively correct decisions about life-threatening emergency medical procedures. And then there would be some who would steal medicines and whatnot. And, there would be no one to investigate and arrest those who would endanger the lives of the patients. And there would also be a huge risk that some crazy person or a fanatic group of people would gain access to extremely dangerous chemicals, viruses, and bacteria. Not just those stored at medical facilities, but those that have been manufactured and that have been stored by past military organizations and institutions related to the military. And so, in the end, there would be no authority to control and prevent any of that. I mean, anarchy, it's not realistic. The unauthorized access to dangerous weapons of mass destruction and so forth would just definitely put everyone at risk. So, that's another thing to think about. And yes, as we have currently witnessed, imperfect democracies are also very dangerous. And we definitely do need to make more perfect democracies, where the rights, liberties, and freedoms of all citizens can really be upheld, protected, and ensured against threats by those who would sacrifice freedom and liberty in the false promise of greater security, as has happened since 9/11 in certain places. And such very flawed semi-democracies are gradually taken over and destroyed by enemies from within, who, while promising to protect essential freedoms and liberties, begin to implement and impose increasing levels of fascism, of plutocratic and or theocratic fascism, in effect totally destroying any real democracy. But the answer can never be totalitarian authoritarian fascism. That is extremely brutal, repressive, violent, and ultimately leads to horrific mass murder. Nor can the answer be the chaotic madness and extremely life-threatening conditions that any attempt at anarchy would cause. Nor is communism possible, as it cannot be economically achieved. This has been proven. And any attempt at communism leads to horrific consequences that obviously deprive people of their privacy, their rights to private property, and the essential freedoms and liberties that everyone needs and has a basic right to. Fascism, communism, and anarchy are all based on very flawed thinking and make false promises that cannot ever be kept. So, then, one must ask, who are the ones who most strongly propose and who seek to convince people that anarchy is a great idea, that is the ideal way for society? Who are those people who want you to buy into the idea that anarchy can work and that it is a good thing? And is it possible that those people who are most adamant about anarchy actually have their own selfish agenda and seek to profit from the confusion, divisiveness, chaos, and instability that they are causing in society in the meantime? Think about that. These are important questions. Well, there is plenty of evidence, both direct and indirect evidence, that shows that those who are most adamant about selling the unrealistic, delusional, false promise of anarchy are conflict profiteers, conflict profiteering people who speculate on social instability, who benefit by the confusion, division in society, and the personal insecurities of individuals who begin to hope for such an impossibly idealistic society as anarchy promises to be but cannot deliver. People who are then also convinced to buy gold and other false investments, and who are convinced to vote for a certain individual politician who naively or falsely promises to reduce government and reduce any form of authority. I mean, for heaven's sakes, of course we all want to experience some degree of anarchy, and in a real democracy there is some degree of anarchy, some degree of personal leadership in each person's life. Also, many of the most vocal anarchists are themselves either physically imposing persons with above average height and physical strength, and have their own ability to bully others by just merely intimidating them through their physical presence, or they are part of gangs of thugs who want to take advantage of the chaos in which they can addict people and then exploit them, milking them for money by selling them dangerous, unhealthy, life-threatening, harming, addictive substances. Anarchy is a false promise based on a false premise. It's also popular among those who have not really thought about what it would actually cause in any impossible attempt to achieve it. People just don't think about this. What does anarchy really mean? And if they really were to think, just really think. I mean, if you have a family and you're, in that family, think about it. Just organizing a family and getting the family to agree to work together is just impossible. And you certainly wouldn't want anarchy in your family now, would you? People who really think anarchy will happen have to be a bit delusional. And efforts to destabilize society by trying to convince suggestible people that anarchy is good are dangerous. Just by trying to convince people that anarchy is good, it's dangerous because you're telling a person something that doesn't, make sense, that it's not going to work. And then you kind of give them this false hope, and then they abandon the idea that democracy, which is something that we all have a responsibility to form and create and make work. Democracy takes effort, constant effort, but it's the best thing we have.